Z. Back to the block, Snoop Doggy Dogg, Funky, yes, the doc went solo on that ass, but it's still the same. Long Beach is the spot where I serve McCain.
I could listen to that song all day, nonstop, on repeat, and it would never get old. Which, by the way, fun trivia fact, Brian, what is George Clinton's song? Did that come from?
That would be Atomic Dog.
Okay, Atomic Dog by George Clinton. Go check that out.
Look at that. We've been live for 5 seconds and people have already learned stuff.
Yeah, seriously.
Where else can you find that?
Here, apparently.
Exactly.
Welcome to Fourth and Frames, everybody, the fantasy football podcast for fantasyandframes.com. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards, and with me I got the usual cast of characters, Teddy Ricketson and Brian Ford. Gentlemen, how you doing? Let's start with Brian. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing all right. A little tired. Had a rough week so far, but glad to be here. Nice distraction from reality, so to speak.
Speaking of a distraction from reality, you got some pretty interesting news coming up this Friday. Could you tell the listeners and viewers what that is?
Yeah, so I'm going to have an opportunity to appear briefly on the Fantasy Alarm Show on Sirius XM Satellite Radio Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm going to talk a little bit of Fish, the band, and Scott Fish Bowl, the tournament.
The bowl.
The bowl.
The bowl. Yeah.
The bowl. Very cool. Teddy Ricketson, how are you doing, buddy?
Doing well, man. I'm just kind of moving and grooving through this week. I kind of forgot we got the holiday coming up, but man, nice thing that I found out today, or remembered today that we have that. So yeah, doing well.
You're nice, and you also have some really awesome kick-ass news to tell everybody.
Well, mine's not as cool as Brian's because it doesn't revolve around me; it revolves around my wife, and so it's not nearly as cool to begin with.
Who is awesome? Yes.
But if you follow at BE Pryor on Twitter, she is the Steelers reporter for ESPN, and she is actually going to be on Get Up tomorrow morning, pretty much all morning, splitting time with Jeremy Fowler over on ESPN2, we believe. So make sure you tune in to Get Up tomorrow morning.
That is fantastic. I'm so happy for her.
And you'll be able to see my living room. That's exciting.
Nice. So we promised that this week, which I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, that's the last time you're going to hear sampled music on this pod. I promise by this time next week we will have brand new official Fantasy and Frames music. So yay, something to look forward to. Speaking of something to look forward to, let's get into today's topic. We're talking about Scott Fish Bowl 11 strategies. There you go. Rep the swag.
Fish Bowl.
Brian, you got your swag on?
You know it.
Cool. I am the only one who didn't. I fail. So
Boo.
I know. So let's get into this. Let's go position by position, and let's just give our thoughts as far as like, what do we think? What do we think about this strategy? Look, there's over 2,000 people competing in this tournament. Anybody who says they have the magic formula, I mean, one person does, right? And we'll find out who that one person is come the end of the year. So this is our stab in the dark at it, looking at all the analytics and looking at all the trends, and let's just kick it off with quarterbacks.
Now,
Brian,
do you want to go over the scoring for Scott Fish before, or do you want to do it position by position?
What
are you feeling?
Let's do it position by position. So I don't have that pulled up. Do you have the quarterback scoring?
I do.
Okay.
So in Scott Fish Bowl for quarterbacks, or really anyone who throws a pass, it is going to be 6 points per passing touchdown, -4 for a reception, an additional -2 if that reception is or interception is returned for a touchdown. 1 point for 25 yards passing, 2 points per 2-point conversion. But here's the big one. This is something I've never seen before. This is new to me. -1 points per sack, -1 point per incompletion, but 0.5 points per completion. So we're going to see some wacky scoring in Scott Fish.
That's pretty crazy. Brian, what are some stats that people should be paying attention to when they're thinking about quarterbacks to select, and as well as when to select these quarterbacks?
So let's start with when. It's super flex. You can start 2 quarterbacks, one in the flex spot. Usually, if I'm doing that in a dynasty league, I'm attacking quarterback at least maybe first or second round, probably first. But that's just the way that I do things. If you look at the 0.5 for a completion and -1 for an incompletion, You need somebody with a completion percentage of better than 2/3, better than like 67% to make that work out. But you also want somebody who's going to take a low number of sacks for the most part. And so two guys stood out to me when looking at that combination of numbers, and that's Aaron Rodgers at 70.7 completion percentage last year with only 20 sacks, and Josh Allen with a 69.2 completion percentage with only 26 sacks. Allen, obviously, with the rushing upside, he's going to be drafted first. Interestingly enough, though, Russell Wilson, who got sacked 47 times last year, is currently projected as number 2 fantasy points per game for Scott Fishbowl scoring. So, there's always anomalies in that too.
That makes a lot of sense. The Seahawks, maybe with their emphasis in running the ball more, or maybe because that offensive line didn't get a huge upgrade this offseason, he'll have no choice but to dump the ball off to a couple reliable targets that we'll get into a little bit later when we're talking about receivers. You talked about completion percentage in normal situations, but let's talk about completion percentage when these passers are under pressure. And so let me, do some technology thing here and assume that I don't mess it up. Yep.
For those listening to this after tomorrow, this isn't going to make any sense to you, but there's super cool graphics on the screen that Jorge made.
I'm going to read it to them.
Okay.
I'm just not going to be like, here, silence for the next.
Yeah. And number 3, that's a big dude. And number 4 is a big dude. Yeah.
So
go ahead. Sorry.
No. Let's go. So we're going to be talking about the top 10 worst quarterbacks under pressure in terms of completion percentage in 2020. First, we have Drew Lock, which, we'll get to that in a second. Then we got Joe Burrow, followed by Carson Wentz, Ryan Tannehill, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Tom Brady, Jared Goff, Kyler Murray, Aaron Rodgers. Now, we're seeing some names here that people are like, whoa, these are players that I'm targeting in Scott Fishbowl to be my quarterbacks, because considering the fact that it's, basically a 2 QB league, even though you don't technically have to throw in a quarterback. Or do you? No, it's just one. Am I right in saying that?
You have to play one.
Play at least one, not two.
You have to play one. You do not have to. Well, I guess technically you could take 0 points. You're supposed to roster one for a complete lineup, and then if you want to do a second, it would be in one of 4 potential flex spots.
Gotcha. So we're looking at these quarterbacks and like, okay, well, who's somebody that we've heard people wanting to invest a lot of draft capital in for Scott Fishbowl in the mock drafts that just jump out here? So for me, Kyler Murray is one that I see going pretty early in Scott Fishbowl mocks. And yes, this is concerning because, under pressure, how does he perform? The incompletions can hurt you, as Teddy just alluded to in fantasy scoring. Technically the Cardinals didn't have a horrible offensive line. They were the 5th best ranked pass blocking unit according to Pro Football Focus last year. But again, those incompletions come back and hurt you. But again, somebody like Kyler Murray, he has the rushing upside, something we'll also get into in a little bit that can help you in Scott Fishbowl scoring. Ryan Tannehill is somebody else who's jumping out. The addition of Julio Jones this year, it makes you wonder, how good is that Tennessee offensive line going to be? Well, Taylor Lewan's coming back from, I believe, tearing his ACL last year. So there's some stability there. So not somebody you have to worry about so much. Carson Wentz, he's no longer with the Eagles. He's with the Colts, and he's in a good pass blocking situation. Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, that one is jumping out to me. People may be like, ooh, I'm going to wait on quarterback and get Joe Burrow later on in my Scott Fishbowl drafts. Well, should you? I know he has the offensive weapons, and I know they addressed offensive line in the later rounds of the NFL draft this year, but how confident are you? You know what I mean? Like, I'm confident in the skill players for the Bengals, more so than I am so much in their quarterback, if that makes any sense. So that's kind of something there. Drew Lock, that in Denver, that's an interesting situation there. They're not so much a great pass blocking unit last year. Now, some people might be thinking, ooh, I can wait on quarterback even longer. Maybe I can grab a Teddy Bridgewater, because maybe Teddy Bridgewater will do well, because he was great last year in completion percentage when under pressure. But
I was about to say we need to make sure we throw that statistic in there. In completion percentage, he was great. He still had 15 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. But
so just talking about completion percentage. but now he's in Denver, and so maybe that's not the smartest thing to do as far as waiting on Drew Lock. A couple other of these guys, Tom Brady. I mean, that offensive line is pretty good in Tampa. Aaron Rodgers, that offensive line is pretty good. So we're not really worried there. We're not worried about Baker Mayfield. So don't let stats like worst performance, completion percentage under pressure under certain scenarios throw you off in your draft strategies.
So Jorge, with this list and everything, and I guess we could probably tell people what picks we have just so that they have some kind of reference there. So I'm picking number 12 in the pink division. Brian, I know you were repping the fish division pretty hard. Where are you picking?
No, I'm in slot 5.
Jorge, what about you?
I'm in number 8.
With what division?
Snoop Dogg.
Fair enough. So with all of us being kind of in the not back half, but toward the back half of the drafts, how mentally are y'all approaching Aaron Rodgers, who is on this list at number 10, and Deshaun Watson for very different reasons? But honestly, with the draft starting here in less than a week, we don't really have a definitive answer on whether or not these guys are going to be playing and for what teams or anything this season. So how mentally are y'all approaching handling that? Are you just going to take it and hope for the best, or are you trying to avoid those guys?
I'm dealing with quarterbacks like I deal with my life. I'm just avoiding all drama. I can't do it.
Hey, that's not a bad policy.
Like, does it hurt me? If it hurts me, it hurts me. But I'd rather go with a sure thing than something that's kind of like still undecided up in the air, despite how good they are.
Sure.
Let me go through a mock that I've recently been doing and take you through the first couple rounds to give you an idea of what my strategy is at the 8th spot. So starting off, I went Dalvin Cook, and then I went Nick Chubb, Jalen Hurts, Justin Jefferson, Carson Wentz, Cooper Kupp, James Robinson, who I still have faith in, Logan Thomas, and David Johnson. I am not afraid of punting quarterback in Scott Fishbowl. Right. Like, okay, you want to load me up with skill position players and have like a baller team and have like my weak spot be quarterback? Like, okay, and quarterback I feel like is the position, and especially with the scoring in Scott Fishbowl, where there's more to lose with the sacks, with the incompletions, with the interceptions, with the pick sixes. Unless you're getting one of these guys that has a high, completion percentage or rushing upside, real high rushing upside, then why invest high draft capital, I think, at the quarterback position? That's just my
Brian, what about you? How are you handling those guys?
I'm a little more confident that we'll see Aaron Rodgers on the field, and specifically in Green Bay. I don't buy the fact that he's getting traded to Denver. But like Jorge, I probably will be trying my best to avoid him, given the uncertainty. However, at a certain ADP, at a certain value, he makes sense. The lack of rushing upside means he's not a guy that is high on my radar anyway.
Fair enough.
Did we cover quarterbacks pretty?
Yeah, the only one that I was going to say is a guy for me that's kind of checking the boxes that Brian mentioned earlier is actually going to be Derek Carr. I know not the sexiest of names, but he did complete 67.3% of his passes last season, which is above Brian's suggested 2/3, which I do like the math that got checked out there. I will be honest, I didn't do a deep dive on their offensive line and if they are similar to last year or not, but I know they have Kenyon Drake now in the backfield. But Derek Carr is only sacked 26 times last year. And I am saying only because the completion percentage holder above him, Kirk Cousins, who looked a lot better with touchdown interception spread, was sacked 39 times. So, I think that if you are going to wait on a quarterback and try your best, I'd say Derek Carr in like the middle rounds or late rounds. I don't know, however your league draft is going, wouldn't be a bad target.
Nice. And to Jorge's point with having a lot to lose in quarterback, Cousins had, I think, famously last year in Scott Fishbowl, a negative points game because of interceptions and sacks. So,
yeah, I think he had a game where he threw 2 pick sixes or something. So, that would have been horrible.
Yeah, that was against, I believe, the Panthers. Jeremy Chin, the rookie safety, I believe, did both of them in that game.
Was it against my Panthers? I couldn't remember. That's so crazy. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
Nice. Very nice. All right, let's go to the running back position now. And let's talk about a little something. Let's talk about the first downs. You get half a point for a first down. These are the top 10 running backs in first down, completions, I guess, in 2020. Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, Jonathan Taylor, Ezekiel Elliott, Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery, Kenyon Drake, Alvin Kamara, Nick Chubb, and Lamar Jackson. Number 10, quarterback coming in there, a rushing quarterback with high first down potential. That's easy points right there. Lamar Jackson, obviously, he's probably not falling to us, in the later half of the first round. But if he was there, is he an automatic yes for you in your first round?
I mean, I'm picking 12. If he's at 12, I'm taking him. Because I've got 12 back-to-back picks, so I can easily do Lamar and then hopeful Darren Waller that falls to me. But either Lamar or another running back or wide receiver or something. So yeah, I personally would, because I am a Lamar truther, even though for what I think he's going to be able to do in Scott Fish. I don't think he's going to be the most accurate quarterback, but he's also not going to throw that much. But yeah, if he's there at 12, spoiler alert, pink division, he's going to be gone.
Nice.
I've seen him around at 5 in some of the mocks I've done, and I've usually taken a Kyler or a Josh Allen ahead of him, but I'm starting to think about that a little differently. And if he's around at 5, he might be a guy that I would pick.
And so let's say you're not going to get one of these, amazing rushers. Let's talk about some notable rushing options that you could potentially wait on. Aaron Jones, probably not, but he was number 13 in first downs attained last year, followed by Kyler Murray. Gus Edwards comes in at 18, and I know if David Ibrahim of Fantasy Go is paying attention, he's a huge Gus Edwards fan. He just got re-upped this year for that lucrative contract, lucrative for a 2-year deal, but whatever. Still, yeah, there you go. Kareem Hunt at 19, Antonio Gibson at 22, Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 25. And let's just look at ADP real quick. When we're looking at fantasy points projected by running backs, and if you go to for those who are participating in Scott Fishbowl, if you go to your MFL app and you're scrolling and you go by running backs and you look at projected points, I have to go down quite a ways before I get to Antonio Gibson. He's only projected to get you 12.5 fantasy points. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 12.0 fantasy points. Isn't that kind of weird? Like all these elite players are just like projected.
I think it is weird for the Gibson one, but for me, at least in Washington, that's just because I think J.D. McKissic, if he even remotely does what he did last year, is going to be someone that's going to have value and kind of take away from Gibson's potential point ceiling, just because it is a 0.5 or half point PPR fantasy league. And so, when you kind of combine half point per reception plus half point per first down, J.D. McKissic had like 55 first downs last year in like total. So I think that there's going to be little sneaky ways that these guys that are, falling forward for first downs are going to kind of eat into the fantasy studs that we are used to.
Even like Josh Jacobs, who's like the 5th in attaining first downs last year, his ADP is around 46. I mean, that's somebody that you could potentially wait on if you wanted to go quarterback heavy, wide receiver heavy, tight end heavy early in your early rounds of your draft. So it's these scoring standings just mess with you just so much. Brian, you got anything for running backs that you want to just throw out there?
Yeah, real interesting to me. Joe Mixon is 5th in projected points per game based on SFB scoring with an ADP of 26.64, ahead of, as far as being ranked points per game, names such as Saquon Barkley, Nick Chubb, Aaron Jones, Jonathan Taylor, Ezekiel Elliott, etc. Interesting. Some people think he's going to get some of those targets that Gio Bernard vacated this year. We'll see.
All right. Let's go take it now to the receiving portion here, assuming I don't mess up what I'm doing. There we go. These are the top 10 receivers that got your first downs last year. We got Travis Kelce, first tight end that we're going to be mentioning on today's show, followed by D-Hop, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, Darren Waller at 5, Allen Robinson at 6, Calvin Ridley, DK Metcalf, Keenan Allen, and Justin Jefferson. Now, let's say these are the guys you're targeting in the early round of your drafts. Okay, cool. But let's say you miss out on these guys or a few of these guys. Well, coming in at 11 in terms of first downs attained last year is Tyler Lockett. I was kind of surprised by that. You mentioned Russell Wilson, his ADP, or where he is in terms of fantasy points per game. Brian, his receiving options got a lot of first downs. I didn't really think that those two names would be somebody that would be so close in terms of a top 10 list in first down yards or first downs attained. Brandon Cooks at 22. A lot of people are sleeping on Brandon Cooks, and they shouldn't be sleeping on Brandon Cooks. And if you are sleeping on Brandon Cooks, go over to fantasyandframes.com and read our Four-Eyed Sleepers article talking about Brandon Cooks. Russell Gage at 23, Tyler Boyd at 34. Teddy, you've written I don't even know how many articles on Tyler Boyd this offseason.
All over the place, man. I am so high on Tyler Boyd just from the consistently rising ADP of T. Higgins and Jamar Chase.
Again, somebody you can get in the later rounds if you wanted to go running back and quarterback heavy. Chase Claypool, 38. One that really stood out to me, which you would think with his NFL draft pedigree, he'd be getting a lot more attention. Jerry Jeudy for Denver. He's another person who converted a lot of first downs last year. So these are just some names or notables just to keep an eye on in the later rounds of your draft if you wanted to punt the wide receiver position early on. Brian, you got anything for any wide receivers here or receivers in general?
Going off the same fantasy points per game projected for SFB scoring, Stephon Diggs is 8th, yet he's being drafted ADP-wise as wide receiver 3. Interesting difference there.
Touche. Yeah, that's pretty much what I got.
The only thing that I was going to say, since we did include kind of group tight ends there, it is a tight end premium league. So they are going to get an extra 0.5 points per reception, so a full point, and they're going to get an extra 0.5 points per first down. So they're going to get a full extra point for catching and for receptions and for first downs. So that's why if you are in any mocks, even though it is a super flex league, you are, I know at least in the 12s group chat that I'm in, everyone's talking about how it's very, very rare to see Darren Waller still there, even at number 12. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see which leagues take, which approaches to these things to see who's actually going to be available in yours. I guess that'd be the one benefit of having a first or second pick, as you kind of know who's going to be there.
Where do you all stand with tight end as far as, do you go either I get great or I wait, like one of the top 3, or are you okay with somewhere in that middle tier, like, a Hawk, a Fant, a Gesicki?
So
go ahead. No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay, fine. I will. I gotta be honest with you. I don't know if it's the Coors Banquet talking right now, but at 8, and then the turnaround real quick, I might do something super crazy and go Kelsey Waller.
Oh,
right. You gotta have to think outside the box here with Scott Fishbowl, because everybody talking about doing the exact same strategy. Who's going to maximize the benefits here? Once the banquet wears off, I'll probably say don't do that. But it's just it's just an interesting thing there. I think if either of those guys are available in the latter half of the first round, early second round, grab those guys. I'd rather have those guys than wait on a Hawkinson like you're talking about, waiting on insert name.
Yeah. Now I'll kind of go the other direction here, just because if you look at kind of stats from last year, if you're looking at guys that had somewhere between 53 and 67 receptions, you're looking at everywhere from Mark Andrews down to Eric Ebron. So I mean, there's a lot of guys, and when it comes to first downs, they're all within 10 first downs of each other. So I think once you do I think the system that we currently have, even with it being tight end premium, I think it actually creates a bigger gap between the tiers, between tier 1 and tier 2. But I think tier 2 is a lot more deep than people think it should be, than people realize. So for me, if I'm not going to be getting Travis Kelce or Darren Waller, I'm probably going to, wait on getting a tight end and then get 1 or 2 in the later rounds. Just because, I mean, between looking at the numbers between Dalton Schultz and Noah Fant, they're fairly identical.
If you look at the fantasy points per game for Travis Kelce, 20 points per game, and he's right up there with a top running back or a top quarterback or a top wide receiver. I mean, I think if he's available in the latter half of your draft, that you can't pass up that value. Now, there's another caveat here to Scott Fishbowl, which is new this year, and that is you can include kickers in your flex spot.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are a lot of great people out there doing work, talking about fantasy points and kickers for Scott Fishbowl. I'm sure you can go out there on Twitter and you'll find it. Trust me. Lindellians at Lindellians on Twitter.
I always call her Linda Lyons, but yeah.
Sure. Okay. That works too. She's doing a lot of great stuff. They're putting together a lot of cool data.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely go over there and check her out and follow her and get all that information to help you with your Scott Fishbowl leagues. Brian, Teddy, do you have anything on kickers that the Ford fans should be aware of?
If I honestly think that it's going to be worth taking one, because that's going to be one of the things is, as Jorge said, you can flex kickers, and that doesn't mean that you start a kicker and can flex one. You don't have to start a kicker. They're not they're not in the required positions that you have to start to have an active lineup. If you want to play a kicker, they can only be flexed. But if you look at some of the kickers, like some of the best kickers in the league are going to be pretty consistent with what they're going to do for you, whether they're on really good offenses or offensive that are good enough to get them in field goal range and then not score. So like if you're, I think Linda, I believe had a tweet about Jason Myers out of Seattle from last year, but he hit. So essentially the way kicking works, just so we can kind of stay consistent with the scoring, is you get a point for every extra point. You lose a point for every missed extra point. It's decimal scoring for field goals. So if it's a 37-yarder, it's 3.7 points, 42, 4.2, etc. But if you miss a field goal, it's -3, no matter the distance. And so if you're looking at kickers from last year, Jason Myers hit all but 3 of his extra points. He hit 49 of them. And then he hit every single field goal that he attempted. So I think there's definitely some intrigue here with that, even if you're looking at like Young Hoku from the Falcons. I mean, obviously Justin Tucker, Harrison Butker for the Chiefs, even though he kind of got shanky a little bit with some of his kicks last year. But I think that if you're looking at like the top kickers, I'd rather honestly flex a top kicker on a week than I would like a wide receiver 3. These rosters are going to be 22 spots deep. Plus, there's 12 people. So, I mean, I can't math. I majored in English. That's a lot of players we're going to be drafting. I think, honestly, week to week, there's probably going to be a kicker that you'd rather play than, a deep dive on like a wide receiver or running back.
What are your thoughts on that, Brian?
Yeah, I'm going to draft a couple kickers for that same reason. Linda has some good data on how some kickers compare to, total points for the year to, some of these wide receivers that you would normally draft ahead of them, or even some low-end running backs too. So I'll definitely draft a couple kickers. Plus, it's just fun, If we're gonna flex kickers, then you know what? Then flex kickers. Don't avoid them. Just be part of the fun and put in some kickers. And for Linda, who may or may not be listening, I would say Tyler Bass is a guy I'm going to take a look at too.
And the other thing I will say is, like I said, we've kind of gone through the scoring of Scott Fishbowl and kind of got nitpicky with it, with 0.5 points here, half a point here, that kind of stuff. One of the other things is that there is a section on the scoring for kick return. So kick return, punt return, 6 points for any return TD, 6 points if your player just happens to recover a ball in the end zone for a touchdown. Honestly, looking at the data through PFF's premium, I don't think that any of the guys that do return kicks consistently are going to be worth rostering, because you're just kind of be hoping for like Cordarrelle Patterson to take one back on a particular week. But like all the other punt and kick returners don't usually have, at least from the data from last year, don't have a huge role in their offenses, probably for, health reasons. But at this point, I can't really say that you should make a roster move or a draft move based solely on having somebody to return a kick.
I think that pretty much wraps up our take on Scott Fishbowl strategy. Look, what makes Scott Fishbowl really great, besides the charitable aspect of this tournament, is do you guys remember the days when playing fantasy football was just, yay, I'm picking my favorite players and I'm just going to have a good time cheering on my guys, and if I win, great. If I don't, okay. But it's all for fun. That's what
we call that the Brooke Pryor draft strategy.
Well, you know what? It's a good strategy if that's what you're about, right? Like, that's what this feels like.
And Jorge, we did have a comment just drop in.
Yep, I'm putting it up right now.
There it is. Hey, Lauren, thanks for tuning in.
Thank you very much. Sorry, guys, just joined, but have you talked about quarterback scoring? We have, but let's go back to it. What do we got for quarterback scoring again, Teddy?
Yeah, so when it comes to quarterback scoring, 6-point passing touchdowns, -4 for interceptions, an additional 2 for pick sixes, sacks, incompletions, completions. So I agree, Lauren. I'm not necessarily as worried about the fumble thing, just because that's usually everyone has that. With running backs, wide receivers, they all kind of, that's like an even playing field for me. But when it comes to is what Brian mentioned earlier, is looking for guys, for quarterbacks that have around that 2/3. I think, Brian, you said that 2/3 kind of mark, 67% for completion percentage. Oh yeah, sacks. Yeah, totally. So for sacks, we also looked at the beginning of the podcast, the offensive lines and who did threw well under pressure and who didn't. So it is going to be something that you might want to look at. But even if you just look on PFF or other sources, or just look back at the beginning of the recording or listen to the beginning of the podcast, and we kind of go more in depth into it. But in a general sense, I wouldn't necessarily worry about huge TD numbers, low interception numbers. Obviously, that's going to be a big part of it. But for us, it seems with the settings they have for Scott Fish that we're really looking at completion percentage and more of those guys that are accurate for the reasons that you mentioned.
Absolutely. And having a good rushing floor with first down attainability is definitely something also just to keep an eye on. So thank you for tuning in, Lauren. We got another... Will do. Thank you. Absolutely. Yeah, but going back to that's what this tournament is. It feels like, I get to pick these players. Yeah, there's some strategy to it, but then at a certain point, you're talking, like you said, wide receiver 4s and 5s and so on and so forth. And you know what? Screw it. At that point, yeah, I will take back-to-back kickers. You know what I mean?
Let's see if Cordarrelle Patterson can take one back today.
Yeah, like, you know what I mean? It's just old-fashioned fun, the way fantasy football is supposed to be. And I'm looking forward to Scott Fish Bowl this year. Every year, to be lucky to be a part of it is fantastic. To people who are out there who have not yet done so, join your division chats, whether they're on Twitter or on Slack. Join your
ours on Discord. So yeah,
there's on Discord. Yeah, I mean they're on they're everywhere. Really get to know your league mates. You never know who's in them. You might have a big celebrity or two. You may just have fellow analysts, or you may have fellow fans. For the analysts that are out there, don't discount the fans. Maybe they know something. Watch them beat you more often than not, probably.
I have an 11-year-old fan in mind who is already talking so much smack.
Is that Luke?
And I am terrified of him. Like, he's like the youngest GM or something on Twitter. But he put up a video that literally, like, he called out everyone in the pink division. And I am terrified of this kid. Like, I'm so nervous.
That is awesome. But again, this is the fun stuff. This is what this tournament is about. So have fun with your Scott Fish Bowl drafts. We're heading into the holiday weekend right now as we're recording here on Wednesday, June 30th. And by the time you hear from us, you'll be in the thralls of draft season. Hopefully the drafts move smoothly. You don't get held up too much with the long timer, but enjoy it. Have fun with it. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us at Fantasy and Frames on Twitter or on Facebook or on Instagram. I think we're going to get the Discord channel up and running pretty soon, as well as reach out to all of us. Me at Jorge B. Edwards, Teddy Ricketson, FF Junkie _ for Brian. Before we wrap up the show, though, let's go over both of y'all's big news for the week. Let's start with Teddy this time.
Look at me. I get to go first. That way Brian can end it on like a super big mic drop. But again, mine is more indirect because I'm just in awe of my wife. But my wife, Brooke, at B.E. Pryor, who I'm pretty sure just paused her Netflix show to hear me talk about her, is going to be on Get Up tomorrow on ESPN2. She will be hanging around for most of the morning talking NFL and really whatever they make her talk about. But make sure you tune in and look out for that.
That is very awesome. I will have my phone streaming it in my pocket. I'll listen to it. I'll be able to listen to it. Watching it might be tricky, but definitely going to be tuning in. Brian, you got some news as well. What is your news for the 4-Eyed fans out there?
Yeah, so a fellow member of the Fish division is Howard Bender, a.k.a. Roto Buzz Guy, and he's got a show on Sirius XM called The Fantasy Alarm, I believe with Jen Placenti as well. And I will be on there Friday at 7 p.m. To talk Fish the Band and Scott Fishbowl the Bowl and have a good time.
That doesn't get old hearing that.
It doesn't.
And for me, I am going to be cranking away, getting ready for our divisional previews. They're going to be starting to be released next week. We're going to be releasing 2 articles a day per team. In the morning, you're getting your divisional preview on offense. In the evening, you're getting divisional preview on defense, specifically in the form of individual defensive players. So we're going to get you covered for all the teams, kicking off next week with the Carolina Panthers. So stay tuned. Get excited for that. It's going to be 32 days of 64 articles of team previews. So get ready, everybody. Yeah. And by saying get ready, everybody, I'm also talking to the fellow writers here at Fantasy and Frames. Like, get ready.
I just realized you brought me on as editor, and I realized why you did it, and now I wanted to give it back.
No takebacks. No. That's not how it works here. But anyhow,
my take on Josh Allen is going to be he's good.
Draft him.
Wrong. Exactly. So we're looking forward to giving you all that information so you can get ready for not only your Scott Fishbowl drafts or your redraft leagues. They're going to be coming up come August. And I know we're still a little bit away from August, but still it's coming. It's coming around the corner. So sit tuned for all those articles, as well as more of our 4-Eyed Sleeper articles are going to be coming out, as well as our rookie profiles. I think we have a few more rookie profiles to highlight. And don't forget to head over to fantasyandframes.com and check out all of our article content. Our rankings, our dynasty rankings. We'll soon be having our redraft rankings up soon for offense and defense. So we're doing a lot of stuff over at Fantasy and Frames. We love what we do. The analysts there love what they do. We're literally one big 4-Eyed family over there, even though some of us in real life don't really wear glasses, but that's neither here nor there. So definitely head over to Fantasy and Frames. Definitely good content. I'm totally biased to saying that, but I don't care. And with that, thank you for watching the 4th and Frames podcast. For Brian, for Teddy, I'm Jorge. You all have a great 4th of July weekend for those who celebrate, and enjoy Scott Fishbowl next week.